Vítejte u další epizody Mediace bez hranic. V zastávce číslo 17 se budeme věnovat přeshraniční rodinné mediaci.
No,
It's recording the entire time already.
no, okay, never mind.
Got it.
Hello, Mirella. Thanks a lot that you find a time to join me for discussion about cross-border family mediation. But first of all, I have to give you a big credit about that, because when we met for the first time, I was quite lost about mediation and how to start. And do you remember what you told me?
I don't know, maybe something like just start?
Yes, exactly.
Really?
Just start, Michael, and you will see where it goes. And here we are in
Awesome. Cool.
uh,
Lucky guess, probably, or maybe I'm telling it a lot.
here we are in podcast Mediation Without Borders and talking about cross-border family mediation with Mirella Kreder. So, Mirella, tell me, first of all, what brings you to the field of mediation and dispute resolution?
Thanks again for inviting me over to your podcast. That's a really cool thing, and it's really funny that you're mentioning this, because I'm trying to remember when we met, and it's already like, it feels like forever. It like feels like kind of in different occasions, and as you said, eventually it just becomes so organic and so normal, and you can't imagine having done anything else or like having not known this person. So in that case, it's something like with you actually that I can't remember that we haven't known each other. And it's always so amazing when we talk. And so talking about mediation, also how I came into mediation was pretty much the same organic way. Actually, the funny part was that I originally, and I told this story many times, so I'll try to shorten it, but I originally studied business, international business administration, and I worked for a large organization for many, many years.
Okay.
So actually, I'm coming from a like sort of very organic, like how do you say it, a very historical business environment, international business studies, and applied communication in all these fields, of course, because
Okay.
you are, as part of an organization, always talking to different people. You're talking with different teams, and in a way, you're already doing a lot of like relationship building, relationship improving, right? It's all about people and relationships and communication. So eventually, I decided, again, trying to take it shorter, to study business psychology, because I always wanted to study psychology. I was always fascinated in people. I was fascinated by the way we sometimes are extremely annoying and at the same time extremely interesting. It's just kind of this entire who we are, what we do, why we do what we do was always so fascinating to me. So I decided to understand actually how that works, and and how we work in our whole personality, like brain wiring. And so I started business psychology, and one module was mediation and psychological dialogue. And that's when I actually figured mediation is a thing. It is
Okay.
actually a job, and I had no idea. I really didn't know that this is actually a profession, because it was not really promoted back then. And so I said, okay, it felt so organic again. It felt like, but I'm doing this every day. I'm applying so many of these principles, so many of these things in a very informal manner in my everyday, either workplace, relationships. People turn to me when they have trouble in their families, when they have trouble in their relationships, amongst girls. I don't know how this is amongst guys, but it used to be. So anyhow, this you're meeting for a coffee, and then basically you're just kind of talking about relationships. And I hear this now when I'm observing people around me in a cafe or walking across, like on the streets. There's always somebody discussing their relationships, their kids or their families, and usually something with resolving some disputes, or often it's like that. So yeah, long story short, I was so fascinated by mediation as a profession that I then decided to become a mediator, to train as a mediator, to train then as a cross-border mediator, since I'm working internationally, I'm living internationally. And yeah, and eventually then I got acquainted, and I can't remember exactly how that happened, but also through some really, really beautiful chance with MiKK, which is an organization in Berlin.
Okay.
It is an organization that is also partly funded by the EU and other supporters. It's an NGO that is there for families
Mm-hmm.
to help resolve cross-border disputes, to help with family matters, that help in everything surrounding custody disputes, visitation, child abduction. And
Okay. Okay.
so with that, I got trained also as a cross-border family mediator with MiKK.
Okay.
And after several years of cooperating, of working on different, often very emotional and highly escalated cases, or already cases that are at court and then being accompanied by mediation, I got more and more familiar with the systems, more and more familiar with actually the way, the modus operandi, and also the tools
Okay.
they
Okay.
can bring. And yeah, and how it combines local practice with international experience. And yeah, many years in, I decided I want to help promote it even more. And so last year I became a MiKK ambassador for cross-border family mediation. And in my case, for Czech Republic, since this is the country I also live and work most of my time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to promote it also there.
Okay.
This was a long story, right?
Yes, yeah. Thanks a lot. So, you were talking about that you are financed by EU. So it means that you work just in Europe or all around the world, the organization, I mean.
No. The organization is located in Berlin. It's a German organization, but it has projects that are partly co-financed by the EU, so they are supported on a European level, but the organization is working internationally, globally, basically, and especially when it comes to custody and visitation, and especially child abduction cases, which are then concerning, like my last mediations have been, for example, Australia and France, or or
Okay, so
Germany and UK, or Czech Republic, Germany, but living in UK. So it's kind of very interesting. But also, as I said, there's also we have colleagues from Iran, from like all over the place actually, and this is really, really beautiful. Also, the ambassadors that were at the moment were around 20 from different nations. You can look it up on the MiKK website under ambassadors. I can send you that as well. It's really, really beautiful. And we then also meet once a year minimum. And also during those times we are in touch to see how, because also their local mediation
okay.
and local family law procedures are different from international standards, but you can still, if you work cross borders, merge them through mediation, because mediation is dialogue, but also there you have the cultural approach, the lingual approach, and all that. So yeah, so it's not just European, but it is co-funded in some of the projects by
Oh,
the European Union. Yeah.
okay. Really big question. First of all, um, how you deal about with the law, because each state has a different law, and we're talking about Australia and France. It's probably quite even different tradition of law, Anglo-Saxon and continental law. How the organization work with that, or how it works. And the second is how I even find out if I have cross-border family need. Or cross-border family problem.
So the first part, answering first to the second question quickly, because that is part of like MiKK being promoted, or MiKK promoting this concept of mediation, and also the mediators behind. So I, like many others, are MiKK trained mediators then, and also MiKK members. And we are listed, like all of the mediators that are cooperating with MiKK, under a certain model are listed on the website of MiKK, you can find. But you can always also, if it's now concerning MiKK, directly consult with them. You can call them from anywhere. It doesn't matter if you are in Germany or in Czech Republic, and they can try to help you find the right mediator, and that's often happening in intercultural and also child abduction cases, that you are working in a co-mediation, which means, and that's what you said about the legal context. That's why the MiKK organization and MiKK mediators are in these cases applying a so-called 4B mediation model. It is there was a Wrocław declaration 2007 that eventually established a model, or that is basically enshrined in that. That means bilingual, bicultural, biprofessional, and bi-gender, or at least gender adapted. And in the case that means that, for example, if you have somebody from Japan and somebody from England, as you said, first of all, or France, let's take it that way, usually have one mediator, like a mediator team, which then MiKK usually searches for you if you address them. One mediator that has French as a language and the other one that has Japanese as a language. And usually the mediations then happen either in English or translated. So you can also have translators. But first of all, let's say they're happening in English. You always have to make sure that there's one mediator understanding to full extent the language of one of the parties, so that you can also help with communication or misunderstandings. Then bicultural means that you always have one mediator that has the cultural background and notion of the country of origin of one of the parties, right? Because a lot can be subtle, a lot can be also then in the cultural hierarchies of communication and all that. Bi-professional, that means you always have one person who is more like who's a lawyer and understands the legal context, usually then on the Hague Convention level, but also to the legal context of each of these of the country. And then you have by gender, which means usually if you have, it's say a traditional couple, male female, that you have one man and one woman representing, which of course can now also change to having two women or two men. In that case now, for example, to make it easier and facilitate. But with that, so you already have the professional part of the social or psychological aspects by having a psychologist slash mediator or social worker slash mediator and a lawyer. And also, since mediation in that case or in those cases can also be court accompanying, usually the parties also have lawyers, which then can always be consulted, right? I mean, if you're making agreements, if you're making, I don't know, if you're coming up with options, with ideas, then usually you can also ask the parties to do a reality check, and understand the legal context of their countries of origin. So this is one part, how you basically ensure that you can always look back at the local legal grounds and find ways to match them.
Okay, this sounds really complicated.
Actually, I don't think it is that complicated per se. It is more, and that's what I said before about you have, especially in cases around family matters, you have often the legal parts, right? The legal sides that would then speak about kind of returning of children, of custody, and so on and so on. But at the end, they don't need to be in contradiction with then actually with like having mediation even between during this process, because mediation helps you clarifying things that cannot legally be written in stone or would not legally be covered, like necessarily things around communication and visitation and all that. I mean, yes, you can basically base it on legal
just two lawyers. So
but often also there, what you need to have is a conversation and to put the child in the middle. And that's the main goal actually in this entire process, is to look, especially if there are children involved, at the children's side. And this is then, if it's only taken from a legal perspective of each individual country, not necessarily in the interest of the parties, in the interest of the children, in the interest of actually making it logistically possible. So that's why you can still put
Okay.
legal parts on the side, but not necessarily as the main and only ground for decision making and agreements.
Okay, so as I'm listening to you, I think so. It's, when we are talking in mediation in Czech Republic and I'm talking to my student, it's an alternative dispute resolution to the court or arbitration. So as you are talking about it, it's just something extra for like a legal process. You're providing the communication. Do I understand it correctly, or not?
It is actually cute. It is a very mediation oriented questioning. So do I understand you correctly? Is there anything else? Two mediators talking. Well, yes and no, but yes, in the sense of you also have mediators in court, for example. Like I remember, like making it more practical maybe now. I remember I had different cases. They all were really different in so many ways. One was that usually there are already legal proceedings ongoing, right? And so what we are also doing is, and also as ambassadors in that, but also with MiKK as an organization, but in general, trying to highlight to the courts that mediation, as you said, yes, it can be an alternative dispute resolution, but that mediation can also be something that can be additionally used in ongoing court proceedings, right? So I, for example, have been once in an international mediation case, then called to the court actually, which was interesting because I couldn't be there physically at that time. It was the court in Rostock that was breaking a case, a mediation, family mediation case. And so the courts usually highlight to the parties, like they do in Czech Republic as well. I mean, they can make it mandatory, but they can say, okay, you should try mediation.
Yes, yes.
In that case, for example, the court had already had hearings, the lawyers were already acting, but there were children involved and it was a very complicated situation. So the court actually highlighted to parties mediation, and I was called into the courtroom to present mediation to the parties, to explain to them what's happening, what that would where they could help them trying to find a mutual agreement to discuss certain things that cannot be listened to, decided upon, or even included in the entire court proceeding, but that are really like going into the relationship of the couple slash parents in future, because there's kids involved, into the entire situation, what's happening around the kids and the moving and all that, and come to their own agreement, which then, of course, as you said, needs to be legally, of course, also proof checked, but present their own agreement, and then the court can decide to choose that over the ruling that would apply. So basically, even during a court proceeding, during a process, and usually in, like, for example, child abduction cases, you don't have that much time. It would then need to happen very fast. But it can also, in other cases, take longer, that you can pause a court proceeding, you can try mediation instead, or you can do both, basically, that, for example, you say, okay, the court would rule on, I don't know, the children being with the mother or the children being returned to the country. But within mediation, the couple came up with another agreement then afterwards that the court would then prefer over their ruling that was maybe based on more superficial input they had, right? So
Right,
it
right.
needs to be not an alternative, but it can also be a nice additional means to an end, because it allows the party or the parties to come up with their own proposal of agreement, which then can be checked with the court again and held against the ruling of the court, and can, in the best case, if it makes sense, even override the court's ruling for certain matters.
Okay, great. This is like really open-minded like a court, or he has info from you as ambassadors,
Yes.
or yes?
Not
So
from us as ambassadors necessarily only, but yes, also. That's why the ambassador program was eventually also established as what you said before, as a help to introduce the concept to different local institutions,
okay,
local norms, local associations of lawyers, for example, family, different, other like judges, other organizations in a local context, in a local wording, trying to fit the local
just
status quo or modus operandi, right? So in that case, to opening up courts to create an awareness, create trust, help professionals to have somebody they can turn to and gain a greater understanding of how that can work.
okay.
So yeah.
And how it works in Czech Republic?
At the moment, from what I understand, also in family matters, the court is advised to propose mediation to the parties.
Yes, yes, but in cross-border mediation, do you have any project or already
Well,
some?
this is exactly the part from what I hear. There still are, from what I understand now, is there's a lot of potential to actually create more awareness in the court, in the legal associations, with the families, and within the country. That's why Czech Republic was now added to the ambassador program as well to actually
Great.
have this. And I actually, yes, and in my role, I started last year November. So this is exactly that, with you having to talk about it already opens a big door to creating awareness about that, right? To having an understanding of you as a mediator and training mediators in Czech Republic on the one hand, you also knowing about the field of mediation, you also working cross borders without borders and promoting that a lot is a good way to exactly create this understanding of, hey, it is so often, especially in family contexts now, that we have people moving, that we
Yeah.
have families that are multinational, right? That you have multicultural, that you have exactly same,
Yeah,
same.
yeah. I'm Czechoslovak boy. So
Yeah.
you are Mirella. Can you say, or do you want to?
What? What shall I say?
Did you are partially Czech and
Yeah,
partially?
partly Czech, partly German, right? And my partner's French, so and partly German. So kind of there's also, I mean, you can even feel like we're living in different countries, different personal situations, family situations, right? And having mixed nationality families. And I think even if the culture is close together, still then, as you said before, also the legal context might be very different. Also, a person, depending on if you speak the language or not,
Yeah.
understanding the system is very, very difficult sometimes, right? And also, depending on where, then sometimes, because if you're having divorces, let's say, and they are between couples from different nationalities. I don't know how this works right now in Czech Republic, but I think even there, like I know here, for example, depending on who of the parties files for divorce can decide in which legislation it will be held. Is that the same?
I don't know, actually. I am a little lawyer. I will ask my colleague.
Yes.
He's a lawyer.
Because I think this is in Europe still the case. I think you can, within Europe, you can usually, like the party filing for divorce can then decide in which legislation, like they want it to be filed. If they have, let's say, citizenship of Czech Republic, and I'd have citizenship of Germany, and like we were married, and you want to file for a divorce because I'm just talking too much, just the usual, and then basically you would just be the first to file. And I think you could then file in Czech Republic, and it's not necessarily based on where you were living, but and then a different legal system applies. And now
Yeah.
that you're having kids, it makes it also more difficult then in that case. And so, yeah, that's where international lawmaking and mediation comes in as well.
Okay. You were talking about the training. You've been trained
Yeah.
by MiKK and the mediator in your organization too. How it's training look like? As you've told already, there's so many roles of a mediator, like the culture, language, also some legal background. So can you tell us more? Can you tell me more about like a training or education?
Training is really like the first training is really intense. It's it's very long as well, to qualify you actually as a practicing cross-border family mediator. During this training, usually you're already coming as a mediator, right? So in that, mediation per se is again applied a lot in a practical context. It's very practical. It's also in person, so you can really, and it's usually very international. So you have very international mediators there, and you learn a lot about the legal context, especially when it comes to these cross-border family cases, child abduction topics, like a lot of relevant legal aspects in regard to, for example, the 1980, I'm saying 1980 and 1996, because there were different versions of the Hague Convention that
Okay.
talks a lot about international, especially child abduction cases, which means, maybe for not everybody knows what a child abduction case would be or means. It doesn't mean kidnapping per se, like somebody, I'm sorry for saying that, like taking a kid and putting it somewhere in a basement. It's not about that at all.
Yeah.
It is
I
really
know.
just about, let's say, a couple, and then one party deciding it's been too difficult or too much, and then just for the summer holidays, taking the kid to their country of origin to be with the family, and then eventually not returning. This is already.
I know I heard and about some of these cases. Um, uh,
Exactly. So
well,
that, and then you learn a lot about other regulations, about Brussels regulations, about models and specific tools that you use when you are mediating Hague Convention child abduction cases. But then there are also topics that are, for example, models of international family mediation, like the 4B model, which was about what I said before: culture, language, profession, and also gender, aspects of cross-cultural communication, and also psychology, guidelines for co-mediation a lot, because in these cases you're usually co-mediating. So co-mediation is also in itself quite a tricky endeavor, but a beautiful one. I
quite
love it.
quite a challenge also.
Because it depends on different ways of mediating to some extent as well. We are all different in the way we're doing this. Is, of course, we stick to our different, let's say, processes. And that's why the MiKK training provides different models and processes that we align with, because also how mediation is happening in Iran and in Japan is different from how mediation is happening in the US or in England, right? Or in Czech Republic. It's just a different, we're talking about evaluative, transformative, different styles, facilitative. I personally say what helps helps, and I'm very much
Yeah,
working with the
I
client.
said it. I say it too.
Yeah,
It brings me to another question. It's probably most of the time the mediation goes online in these cases.
exactly.
How it works? Do you have any special tools or training about that, or
This is part of the ongoing training, part of the training as well. So online mediation is part, and also just quickly then to continue answering this question about online mediation, just quickly finish, which is very important, I think, also to understand in these trainings for these cross-border mediations, is really to learn about the voice of the child. In our training, there was also a child psychologist who
oh, nice,
really,
nice.
because it's often forgotten. It's forgotten by the parents often in this moment. The child is like kind of torn by many people, by lawyers, by court, by social workers, by psychologists, by the parents, by the extended family. Everybody, right, tries to kind of influence somehow. Depending on the age of the child, it's also more difficult. And so the voice of the child is basically the focus of all this, like kind of, or the main focus here, because often this is the voice not really heard. And so we have also special training on that. This is either in the first training, but also in the ongoing trainings. We're having ongoing trainings every year with additional courses with specialists on the psyche of the children in many ways. So we never forget that. And then the mediators in court model. So as I said, the learning how a mediator can be part of the court process or also present mediation in court and all that. And online mediation, yes, I mean, most of my cross-border family mediations have been definitely online. And the tools that we're using is usually Zoom or some other online tool in the meantime. You have to become very aware. Yeah, like for me, it has become very normal and very natural. But in the beginnings, and also to some extent, thanks to COVID, which is with all its negativity that it brought, also a good thing that people get more and more used to it, trusting it. But you have to also be more aware of who's in the room, make sure that the people are following the rules, that you're that there is still a closed and trustworthy way, right? Can also be that more has to be sometimes in shuttle. We had cases where we weren't sure if somebody is sitting there, so you have to be really aware and really like ensure it with the parties as well, right? So yes, online mediation is also part of the training and part of the strong awareness to make it still, yeah.
Okay, I know I talk about this with my students all the time, and I'm saying there's not such a like a big process, not a methodic. You just have to say it and settle it as a rule, because in these times you can never say if they record it or like break it. You just have to settle down uh, the rules and the trustworthy environment, as you said. But I'd like to return for the first your answer about the kids, about the children, because it's like a big topic in Czech Republic for now. How to work with that, and can you please tell me more about that? You said you bring children psychologists for the training, but practically, how you work as a cross-border mediator with kids, because I assume, sorry about that, all mediators around the world that I'm seeing, it's quite a big challenge and quite hard to do it. Something about that.
Yeah.
Please tell me.
In my cases that I had until now, I haven't had children directly in the cases because it also, usually you can recommend it to the parents, and depending on the topic of decision making or that you need to discuss, there can be of an advantage. In my cases until now, either the parents weren't really let's say, I don't want to call it into it, but it was for them hard to understand why the children would be. And also, I think there was to some extent, I remember one person being hesitant because they wouldn't be sure what the children would say, which is interesting.
Okay.
So you have to create a trust in that on the one hand, but also not in every case it's necessary to talk to the children, or it's not always by the parents so embraced. I know mediators also from MiKK that I'm in touch with a lot and work with, especially two that are in England, because in England mediation and also the family mediation, child inclusive family mediation is differently practiced, and they tend to have children inclusive mediation a lot. And
Uh,
they do that a lot. And they really
them.
both. Huh?
Good for them. Good
So
for
it's,
England.
yeah, and it's actually, I just last year we had also an ongoing training, an entire day with them, and it's really beautiful to see and learning from them how they actually create this trust in parents, how they create this entire process really around including the children in these cases. And it depends on the case again, it depends on the questions that are being raised there, right? But they often really have the children themselves, not necessarily in the mediation with the parents, but also separately to be spoken to and to be invited, like via like really beautiful like letters or notes, or just kind of like including the children really to be part of the decision-making process if the parents are having an extremely hard time to decide on who is taking, I don't know, like are we doing nesting, or are we like who should a child live with, or how are visitation rights, who keeps the family dog. It's a lot of these things, and the kids can then really come forward and bring actually their ideas and their voices to the table. I find this super interesting. I'm just now quickly putting that in as a personal anecdote, because I had just the other day with friends and their kid, there was a situation where we had just something, I don't know, there was like a misunderstanding between several adults, and then we just kind of had a little like back and forth. And I remember then eventually just sitting there, and then one of the kids, and she was 8, coming to me and just saying like, I don't like if adults fight, So it's kind of like really how and we often underestimate that the presence of like the children in this process, the understanding, the feelings, the emotions, the logic they put behind that. Like even my I don't know, it was really cute because my little niece, for example, we had a situation where I was like having an argument with my sister, and she was then later I just then tried to talk to my niece, and she was like, I said like, yeah, well, she said, yeah, mom is your sister, right? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, yeah, I always, like I said, and you also with your brother, sometimes you fight a little, right? And she's like, yeah, when he takes my stuff, or, but yeah, it doesn't matter, And I was like, yeah, but then afterwards you're good again, right? And it's like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, it's the same with us. Sorry. And she says like, yeah, it's not so bad, right? I'm like, no, it's all right. And so it's kind of, but having this dialogue, kind of having this understanding of sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a tough thing, but they know and they remember. And I just the other day had a talk where she said like, yeah, you and mom, you sometimes fight because she's your sister, right? And I'm like, sometimes it seems, but for her, the concept of like siblings sometimes having an argument is normal, right? But it doesn't
Yeah.
shouldn't be maybe, but still it's sort of also working through emotions and all. But we underestimate what they understand, what they know, what they feel, and how much decision making they actually can bring to the table as well.
Yes, that's definitely true. And thanks for another tip to reach out to some England mediator about this concept. I have to definitely talk to them.
I can definitely give you contact there. It's like an amazing two amazing colleagues of mine. I really enjoyed the training with them as well. So we train each other on that as well.
Perfect, perfect. Thanks a lot. I think you talk about cross family border mediation a lot. Do you like something add that I didn't ask, or
I
so?
think you just opened a really important and really good point. And you're also doing this with this dialogue here and with this podcast. And I love that actually what I experience sometimes in different professions, but also in mediation, is like this sort of, well, as a mediator, we have to basically then find our clients and we're keeping to ourselves sort of. But I really like having this abundance mindset of, I mean, there's so many people out there that need help, and we can learn so much from each other. We can connect across cultures, we can connect across countries, and not just for the sake of our clients because
Yeah.
they need that, but also for our own sake, because you learn so much from the people, as you just now said. And I told you, I mean, we're having these trainings with colleagues that actually are living in an environment and context where maybe the way of working, the system around it is already so much further or so much more elaborate or just kind of so much more inclusive, and if we want to change our system for the better, sometimes we don't have to invent the wheel anew. We just have to see, does that maybe also fit into our context, right? How can we maybe also learn from that? How can we share our wisdom and knowledge? And how can we also maybe understand where the differences need to be and how to unite them, right? And so I think having this dialogue also amongst peers having professionals to turn to when you also, as a professional yourself, need support or just need inspiration or, want to transform something. I think this sort of rigid and in your own narrow corridor thinking, it's just so past what our lived reality is. And this is like, I think something, especially in family mediation, but in all forms of facilitation, of mediation, of this work, is very, very, what I find, it's crucial. It's so beneficial. And at the end of the day, everybody benefits from it, right? So thanks for opening that corridor in like kind of a broader sense of happy to connect you with everybody who can then inspire you, happy to connect people around me with different ways of, and that's also as an ambassador in that case, what I'm trying to do is connecting people that are working with this to new ways of maybe thinking about it, to new doors to open that they haven't seen yet, to just systems that can connect, and not exclude each other. So I think that's what I wanted to add, definitely, because this is something where we might not always see the potential, or where we not always know how to get this input.
Yeah, definitely. What is really nice when people ask me how am I doing that, how I'm like reaching you guys from all around the world.
Mm.
And it's really simple. I just find your name from meetings that I'm part of, and then just text you by LinkedIn, or if I have a mail, I use a mail, and everybody is happy to talk about his hair topic, how it works. So in that case, I'm quite happy about people all around me from my field, from mediation.
Yeah, and also in that I find very interesting that because as you said also like or your slogan like mediation without borders, for me the more and more people I encounter from all places of the world, to me I really don't see necessarily artificial borders. Yes, I understand that we are all coming from different contexts and that we all have our own socialization, our own stories, our own minds. Like there's so much that might divide us, but we can find ways how to connect on different on levels that then really help to overcome and kind of demolish, let's say in a good sense, these borders, right? And interestingly, because I do a lot of work around peace building as well. So there, often people then ask me, how did you meet this organization? How did you meet these people? How do you know? And you have people from Africa, from Iran, from Afghanistan, from America, from everywhere, right? And I'm like, well, actually, interestingly, there is a Facebook group that is like kind of peace builders or like the mediators without borders or beyond borders. And usually it's mediators that then come into the field of let's make the world a better place, because so many mediators I know are actually so passionate about actually creating peace in the end, whichever way that might be, right? Peace just in having conversations, peace of mind, closure. So a part of mediation, and when we're talking about mediation as a legal construct, and we talked about that many times, you and I, right? To me, it has become a legal construct. And what I understand, and you said it, it's in Czech Republic as well, it's very much court and law bound. To me, mediation is an ancient concept, like kind of facilitation is an ancient concept and a very psychological one at that. And it boils down to people trying to create a conversation and create peace. And peace might not be both win or one is right and one is wrong. Sometimes peace means let's have a sense of peaceful coexistence within our community again, which can then be in family. Maybe we don't have a right and wrong, but let's create a sort of peaceful environment for our kids to grow up in, even if we might not always be at ease with each other. So mediators per se have what I understand, a very connective and peace building nuance to themselves. So that makes also communication in that way much easier in my experience.
Okay. Recently, I like spread like the meaning of mediation without borders, not just like talking about mediation from all around people from all around the world, but also there's discussion in Czech Republic, but I'm pretty sure that not just in Czech Republic. How to like, and you already said that the mediation is concept quite old, and that's supposed to inspire from another fields of how to behave, or another fields of like knowledge of people, like psychologists. You are a coach, so what do you see where mediation and mediators can inspire, or what to study to be better mediators, peacemakers? Do you have any ideas, or
Well, very, very much so. But we only have, I think, like a few minutes left. No, but well, what I can say, since yeah, I'm working as a coach, I'm a business psychologist. So I mean, I kind of combine exactly these kind of like very practical insights, very psychological insights. If you study business, you also study law to some extent. So even the legal parts can get. So it's sort of you're combining different parts together. But with all what I feel a lot, especially when it comes to studying, and which is a lifelong learning for you, for me, for everybody.
yes,
I
yes,
think we
yes,
are so sophisticated in so many ways. We are so relying on in so many ways on our logic and our, at the end of the day, what I experience over and over again, be it in family, be it in business, be it in work, like it's at the end of the day, we're just human beings. We are like kind of bringing our own story to the table, our own values, our own belief systems, our own triggers, our own package, everything, right? So what I learn a lot, and especially as a mediator as well, you have to create a strong sense of self-awareness, a strong sense of your awareness of how you affect the things around you, how you play into the dynamic of everything, and help people see that to a good extent as well, to come. And there's a different way of reflection, self-reflection that I do within myself, and the reflection that I'm getting from the outside. Now we call it often feedback, but it's not necessarily the same thing, right? But
yes,
kind
yes,
of
yes.
get a sense of, to really understand what's happening. And this is for me a very, very important part to study, is like kind of also building our social intelligence, right, muscle, because we are social animals.
Yeah.
Might have forgotten some of that, but at the end of the day, connection is, for us, it's essential. And we might sometimes believe that it's not, but we are craving for that. So what we as mediators, but also everybody else, I think, can train a lot. And it, as I said, it's an ongoing process of many times also failing in that, right? And then rewiring again is awareness, self-awareness, awareness of the environment, reflection, and yeah, pretty much understanding your own part, either in your pain or your own part in the dynamic.
Okay, okay,
And
nice.
so often if one person already changes a little, like the dynamic has to change, because usually the other sides, the other parties cannot act in the same manner if you change something. So this is something to study, like the psychology, but often I know people who understand how the brain works, but they don't really understand social dynamics, or they don't understand, I don't know, their own inner troubles or projections or else. So having a mix of that
Okay, okay, thanks a lot.
is,
Last but not least, last question. Last question I'm asking to everybody, so I have to ask you, what about AI in mediation? What do you think?
I find it very interesting because let's say I'm actually just right now preparing a post about that, because I had this weekend and a very nice AI encounter. Like really, ChatGPT is my support body in many ways, but I challenge it all the time. I challenge it a lot, and I have like a very, very interesting thing that it. I might no, maybe not. We don't have the time, but I might find it later, and I'm writing about it, because it is to me very helpful to start exactly the process of self-reflection, right? Of perspective change, of challenging your own thoughts, of kind of sorting your thoughts. So I even suggest to parties, let's say beforehand, let's play out this scenario. Take ChatGPT, for example, as your emotional support buddy, and just type in what it says and but then put in the right, of course, also commands saying like, hey, give me the other side of the story, be ready to embrace that. And then just play it through in your head. And I think for that, it can be very supportive. It can be very helpful. But since I challenge it a lot, I just had one of these situations last week again, where I felt very unfairly treated, in some way. So of course I typed it in. I'm like, I needed support. But then interestingly, I saw how it was really, really, really much working towards me, like in my interest, in my sense. And I felt like, this doesn't feel right. So I was like, okay, don't you feel that you're being a little too pro my side and a bit too painting the other side too black, And then, yeah, well, you're right, because I'm programmed that and that way. So I have a really nice way how ChatGPT explains to me how it is trained to be very supportive to the side of the person having the issue, let's say. So you have to have the prompts. You have to already have this sort of reflectiveness to use it wisely, to use it critically. If you're now talking about ChatGPT, I mean, there are so many other, like AI is a variety of work, and we're talking even about functionality like conflict management training as an app or all these things, right? I mean, there are so many ways of applying AI, and I would never say never. I think it can be a helpful tool, but I always say with everything, a fool with a tool is still a fool. So you need to wisely, but like really as a support and back reflecting and perspective change buddy, awesome thing to me at least.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Mirella. As usual, our chat flowed like a strong stream. And I think it's enough for now.
I enjoyed it so much. I enjoy so much talking to you. It's really beautiful, always.
I'm definitely sure that we meet again for another podcast another podcast episode about some another topics that we find out. And thanks a lot.
Next time, let's do business, Michal. There's so many other worlds. Peace building.
Okay. So that's it. Thanks a lot, and see you around the world, as I like to say.
See you soon. Thanks so much. Bye.
S Mirellou moc děkujeme za pozornost a těším se na vás u další epizody Mediace bez hranic.